Paul here, and on this channel we do a ton of tech and gadget reviews, so make sure to hit that subscribe button that's right down there so you can watch more videos just like this one. Now I love reviewing camera gear, and especially ones that relate around my cell phone because I always have it with me. Well, one of my pet peeves with cell phone footage is when it's really bright out and it gets really kind of jerky. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that before, but Sandmarc sent me something, which is their Scape filter kit, which are neutral density filters for the iPhone that we're gonna be checking out in this video. Let's take a look. Before we begin, check out the link in the description below so you can find out more information for yourself. First off, let's take a look at what's inside the kit. It comes with a clip, which clips on your cell phone, which has a bit of a gasket or rubbery ring on the back of it that's gonna help seal out that light. We'll talk more about that later. And then there is a nice case with 3 different ND filters in it. Each of these ND filters is very solid construction. It has aluminum frame, multi-coated glass, looks very good and feels very solid in your hands. And it threads on very nicely, very securely to this mount. And they're also compatible with different Sandmarc lenses. In this case, we have the ND4, which gives you 2 stops of reduction, the ND8, which gives you 3 stops of reduction, and the ND16, which gives you 4 stops of reduction. This is the Scape filter kit. There's also a Scape Plus one that you can get. This one's mainly for cloudy to mid-sunny, but not quite so sunny conditions. If you want full-out bright sun conditions, they have a Plus kit, which gives you the 32, the 64, and the 128. We don't have that, so we're gonna concentrate on this kit in this video. Hold up one second. Let me quickly explain neutral density filters. Neutral density filters just simply limit the amount of light that makes it through to the camera. A neutral density of 4 is 1/4, 25%. That's the amount of light that's gonna make it through. A neutral density of 16, 1/16, that's 6.25%. That's the amount of light that's gonna make it through. So that's gonna vary how much light comes through to your camera. Why would you want to do that? Well, whenever you're either manually changing your camera settings or your camera is optimizing those camera settings, it's trying to balance the aperture size, which is how big is the hole that's letting the light in, the ISO, which is the gain, so how much intensity does it take in effect with each of these things, and then the shutter speed, so how long does it collect the light for. So all those 3 things do different things, and some different combination give you different effects. The 2 main reasons why you'd want to reduce the amount of light coming in is 1, you want a larger aperture. This is going to give you a shallower depth of field, give that bokeh and blurry background that you're looking for. Or number 2, you want a longer shutter speed. This means that the shutter is open for longer periods of time, and this is really important for video because in video you want your shutter speed to be 180 degrees off, which means it is twice your frame rate. So if you're doing 24 frames per second, you want your shutter speed to be 1/48 of a second long, which is half the amount of time. If the sun is too bright and you can't get the ISO down any further, you can't make your aperture any smaller, what's gonna happen is it's gonna reduce that shutter speed to smaller and smaller, and you're gonna see choppy footage. We're gonna perform 3 separate tests using the default photo app as well as a custom one so I can lock in all the settings. And then we're gonna talk about usability because I found out something interesting along the way. The first thing I wanna do is just lock in the settings, look at some landscape, and look at what happens when we put these different filters on it. So we looked at this cornfield with these clouds. You can see it here with no ND filter, the 4, the 8, and the 16. And what you'll quickly notice is it is doing its job. It's reducing the amount of light that comes through. The second thing you'll notice, which we didn't allow the phone to optimize anything as we put them on, is that the sky is a little bit more on the brownish tint whenever you use these, and it's dimming it down. Not a big deal, and maybe it's a look that you're looking for, but I did notice this, and you'll see it some more as we get through here. Next up, we went to this beautiful overlook, and I can't wait till fall because it's just gorgeous, but the sun was beating down in the background, and the foreground was very shadowy. And we want to take a look. I used the basic iPhone photo app, let it optimize everything it wanted, and tried out no filter all the way up to 16, and you can see the results. In some of them, you can see it does help with a little bit of that blandness that we got because of the contrast and such, and it knocked down that background a little bit. You can see though that creeping in of that little bit of a brown tint where that blue sky is probably the easiest place to see it, but I was pretty happy with the results. Next up, we went down the riverfront and took a look using the standard app for the iPhone. Again, very similar things that you're gonna see here where the sky's a little less blue and it's a little bit more brown tint, but things look nice. Next test, I wanted to see if I could reduce that choppiness that you get whenever you pan or move around with a cell phone when it's too bright out. Down at the river front, I tried it. Unfortunately, it wasn't too controlled, so I don't think it was the best test, so I repeated it again at a different location. We use this Pendaloo with this white background, and if you don't know what Pendaloo is, I'll put a link right up here. And we moved it around and dropped it and such to see if we couldn't get the motion blur correct with the shutter speed. First, I tried 24 frames per second, and quite frankly, it was still too bright with that sun on there with even a neutral density of 16 to get the shutter speed correct. So I went to 60 frames per second. The best I could get to without any neutral density filter on there was 1/1792, which is way off from 1/120. And you can see there maybe a bit of choppiness, and if I slow it down because this is being filmed at 24 frames per second and posted in that way, you can see the choppiness difference between what it should be using the neutral density of 16 with the 1/60. Now looking at them very close, you still might not be able to tell the difference, but if we freeze on a frame, right here, you can see how the top one without the filter is perfectly crisp, and the bottom one has motion blur on it. And we're actually looking for that motion blur because that looks more natural to the eye. Test number 3 is the long exposure photo, which is gonna show motion or motion blur in your photo itself. What I used was a hose pointed up with a nozzle on it. The problem was it's a little bit windy, which made it more challenging, and you'll see that in the pictures. If you use the phone without any ND filter on it with that sun blaring, it's gonna be a crisp, sharp photo of everything frozen in time. You don't see any motion, and you may want this effect, but if you want the effect of the motion blur, you see it moving, that's where you use this ND of 16 on here. You can lengthen that shutter and get more time captured, and you can see that. This is awesome for waterfalls. This is awesome for fountains and different things like that. Now with the iPhone, you can do similar things with live view. What you do is enable live view, take a picture, go back to that picture, swipe up, scroll over to long exposure, select that, it'll calculate it, and it'll show you a long exposure. The problem I had is it was so windy, the plants were blowing around, you get this blur everywhere. You can go and edit that and shorten up your long exposure, but it still wasn't good enough with all the blurring around. So if you want a fine-tuned long exposure, you really need something like these neutral density filters with you. Last thing we want to talk about is usability, and it's very simple to use. The clip goes over the lens on the iPhone. It does not cover up either of them. It's big enough to have both the telephoto and the normal lens showing. You could also swap it around and show it on the front of the iPhone as well. That black seal around it does help keep light out. I did find that if you put it on the front, you do get enough light somehow getting through and reflecting back and then back through, I think off the screen, that you do get a little bit of a glare. So if you're using it for a selfie camera. One thing you probably really need to know is the audio piece. Currently you're hearing me through the iPhone's microphones. If you use this to vlog or use the audio recording piece whenever you're taking video and you want to use these, you're gonna hear a slight difference, kind of like a muffled sound. So if I put this on here via the top way, you probably are hearing the big difference now, how my voice sounds pretty muffled if I'm talking to the front of it or the back of it. Even if I rotate this to the side, you can hear my voice right now, and it probably still sounds muffled if I'm talking to the front of it or the back of it. So you do need to keep that in mind whenever you're using this thing. If you plan to vlog or something, you probably need some sort of external mic that plugs in your phone in the bottom of it or some other means for that. I have found this pouch very handy to keep all of them together. I just throw it in my car. It's pretty small and compact, and I keep the clip attached to it so it's ready to go as well. Overall, they have solid construction, and they are going to help you fine-tune your photography and filming skills using your phone. Do keep in mind that if you use the microphone, you're going to have that bit of a muffling, and you may have that slight tinting that I saw, but maybe with some adjustments, you can fix that in post-processing. Let me know in the comments below what you think about them. This has been Paul with the Sandmarc Scape filters. Thank you for watching.